had plenty of negativity circling me as well, but it was just a few voices of truth that broke through some of those other negative ideas and helped me believe that something was actually possible. And a lot of times in our lives, we're pursuing more, but we never stop back to think about what more do we want. Because there's more that we could obtain that will crush us, but there's also another more that we could attain that will actually lift us.
Welcome to the Believe Again podcast, powered by Parable. I'm your host, Josh Robry. In this episode, you get to hear from a truly unique leader, TAUREN Wells. You've sung his songs in church and you've heard him on the radio. He's a platinum-selling recording artist with hits like Hills and Valleys, Echo, Known, and more recently, Joy in the Morning. He's been nominated for 10 Grammy Awards. He's won 8 GMA Dove Awards, and he's just a fantastic person that I know you're going to enjoy hearing from. This is not just an inspiring talk, but it's also a lot of fun because TAUREN's a lot of fun, and he's bursting with vision, plans, ideas, and, well, joy. So let's jump into today's episode. Thank you so much for being on this episode. I appreciate you taking time to do this. It means the world. How are you doing today?
Thank you so much, Josh, man. I'm so excited. I've been looking forward to this and feeling good in Austin, Texas, and it's in the 70s. So feeling pretty amazing right now.
We had a little taste of fall weather, and I cannot wait for it to truly become fall, which is my favorite time of year. And I know you enjoy the fall too because it's football season.
That's right. College football, NFL football, I love it all. We've got the Lions, my team. They're undefeated right now. It doesn't matter that it's just 1-0, but undefeated. Went into Arrowhead, beat the reigning Super Bowl champs, Patty Mahomes. Get out of here. Jared Goff came to town and stole it from him. So I'm very excited. I made my wife wear a Lions jersey all day last week just to celebrate the fact that we actually got a win.
I saw that Instagram post where you gave her that jersey, and she looked thrilled. I mean, really happy
yes.
to be wearing that.
Yes, she was thrilled. Sure. Well, we got home after work, and I was like, okay, babe, you can take that off. She was like, finally, this thing is driving me crazy. So, yeah.
Last year, you got to do the national anthem for the Detroit Lions. I know you've been on lots of platforms and done lots of performances, but that was a little different.
That was special.
How did you feel doing that?
That was special. So I got to do the national anthem for the Thanksgiving game, and I got to bring not only my wife and my kids, but my mom and my family. So that was really cool because we grew up watching the Lions every Thanksgiving. So to go down on the field and be a part of all of that was really, really cool. It was a great moment for our family. So didn't come out with the win. My son Lawson was heartbroken when the Bills won. So we had to work him through a mild depression after that. But it was an amazing moment for sure.
Well, I hope you guys have a great season this year. And as I was doing research for this podcast, I went and listened to your podcast, The High Note, which I loved. And I found out you're not just a football fan, you're a big sports guy.
Yeah, I love sports. Grew up playing sports. Not ever the best athlete, but just really loved it. Loved watching sports as well. I'll play just about anything. It's a good distraction. I don't have a lot of distractions that are more mindless, so I enjoy it.
Well, you and Amy would have a lot to talk about. She is the most knowledgeable sports person I've ever met.
Really?
Oh yeah, she's way more. And I love sports. I would consider myself a sports guy.
Yeah.
But my wife Amy listens to football podcasts from the moment she wakes up to the moment she goes to bed, and she was
amazing.
Oh yeah, she's been on Feinbaum a couple times, and I really wish she would do a sports thing because it's just incredible sitting and listening to her talk. It's something else.
That is phenomenal. I love that. I'm gonna we'll have to test out some of her knowledge next time we're together.
Yeah, you won't be disappointed. But speaking of, just speaking with sports personalities, you had some great ones on your High Note podcast. Would you mind telling us a little bit about that podcast, some of those guests for those who haven't listened to it yet?
Yeah, we've had so many incredible guests, and it's been really interesting because not really being like a proper athlete or playing in college or anything like that, I have a unique connection to a lot of really great athletes and coaches and people in the sports world. So I think I've had Pastor Tim Tebow on the podcast, Steph Curry, Coach Tony Dungy, Coach Scott Drew, many people like that, Derek Carr, a lot of guys that are strong in their faith and have led teams to significant places in sports and have great sports stories, but also have great faith stories. And that's what I love bringing out is how people can engage a sphere that is not intrinsically spiritual and bring spiritual leadership to it. And hearing, Steph's story of the foundational Christian principles that his mom really helped him and his family build their lives on, it's you see it working itself out now when he's on the biggest stages. And so inspired by someone like Tony Dungy. That was one of my favorite podcasts, man. Just incredible insight, wisdom, how he's leveraged his influence for the gospel and how he stays close to the Lord. Scott Drew's podcast about a culture of joy, actually wrote a book on joy in the sports world and how he turned a losing program into a national championship program. It's incredible. So I get to leave those conversations super fired up and inspired. So it's been fun having those guests.
Well, speaking of joy, you have an album out, Joy in the Morning, and in one of your High Note episodes, you did a listening party. Listening to that was really rewarding to me as a fan and as a listener, because whenever artists make a song, I'm always wondering, hey, what went into that? Like, what were you thinking? What's the double meaning behind these lines? And I was hoping maybe you could take us through one of those songs in particular, because even though it may not be the most popular song on the album, it's my favorite song. The song "Come Home."
Woo!
And
yes,
and I think it goes along the theme of this podcast. It goes along with really, what you're stepping into, planting a church. I think it's a great message for church planting, pastoring. So maybe take us through the process of that song, writing it, and what your heart was behind it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's just something obvious that sometimes we as church leaders shy away from because maybe we feel part of the problem at times, or it's a little too close to home, or maybe we've been complicit in a culture that creates church hurt. And I know there are a lot of opinions around the phrase church hurt, and I'm definitely pro-church. We're planting a church. I'm pro-pastor. I have a pastor and I am a pastor. I'm pro-spiritual leadership. Absolutely. But I think that there is also the reality that church is messy, people are imperfect, and that leading is difficult. And whether you're in the leadership position or if you've been in the pew, so to speak, we have all felt the pain of being in relationship with other people in a faith context in a church. So the idea behind Come Home was, that opening line, I know that you've been wounded. First of all, acknowledging the fact that there have been atrocious things done to people in the name of God in general, within the faith space where we proclaim the gospel, but also use pulpits as gavels and thrones of judgment, where we've abused authority and power in spaces. It is what it is. So I think being aware that people have been wounded, and not always does it come from the platform. Sometimes it comes from the people sitting to the left and right of you, people that gossip and talk and push you out and make you feel marginalized in a space where you're supposed to be included. So acknowledging the fact that church is messy, that we do get bumped and bruised by being in relationship with one another, and wanting to speak to the person and really the generations of people who have walked away from not necessarily their spirituality or their faith, but have walked away from the church, the connected community of faith. So the hope behind Come Home was, if we acknowledge people's pain and we acknowledge our place in it, perhaps we can build a bridge to allow those people to come back into our spaces and to actually be loved and accepted and inspired and challenged and changed. And then, of course, this is the posture of God toward humanity, that when we run away like a prodigal, and you can be a prodigal right there in the pew, if our heart is far from God, our prodigal heart has drifted, God is standing, waiting, anticipating our return, and is ready to cloak us in his righteousness and to give us another chance. So that's the heart behind Come Home. It's one of my favorite songs to perform live. It smacks, as the kids say, and that song's got Riz. My boys were teaching me these words yesterday, so I'm trying to use them. So yeah, I love that song. I'm glad that you mentioned it.
Yeah, I love it, and I like it musically, and it's just happens to be a song that I enjoy the message as well as the music's awesome. It's a great song to get hyped to. With that podcast, you also do another one with your wife, Alive and Wells, which fantastic name, by the way. Who came up with that?
I think it was both of us. I don't remember, honestly, so I'll give Lorna the credit, because she had a blog called Alive and Wells first, but I think I named the blog. But I honestly don't remember. But I take credit for naming all of our kids too, and she quickly corrects me and says that it was her. So I don't want to steal her shine.
Well, what is the difference between those two podcasts?
So the High Note is just driven by me as the host, and it is an interview-based, conversation-based podcast at this point. Season 1 had a lot of me just unpacking thoughts, scripture, ideas, and then we ended with a season finale with Lorna, and it just did really well. And so we were like, well, we should probably, yeah.
Get your wife on there if you want to double your following.
Exactly. Why that's not just the default, I don't know. So then we launched into our own podcast. That's the two of us. And that's not interview based. That's just us having conversation with practical points about faith, about family, our family culture, some things that we do, some household practices, and then also how we view topics like social media or politics, church, things like that just give people our perspective, and they can take what they like and leave what they don't. But that's the heart behind Alive and Wells.
So in Alive and Wells, I learned that there was a point in time where Lorna was leading the choir as a worship leader, and you weren't involved, in a staff position anyways at all, but you were doing other things at the church. Is that right? Yes,
that's right. So in our first ministry job together, we were on staff at a church called Royalwood Church in Houston, Texas. It's my father-in-law's church, and my wife was the worship pastor and ran everything. I started as a youth intern and then moved into a creative director and then moved into an experienced pastor. But I rarely led worship. I sang in the choir. I would be on the worship team. But a lot of what I did was more behind the scenes with our teams and things like that. And Lorna was leading worship, leading the choir, and running the the music program. So, yeah, it was an interesting adjustment when we went to Lakewood, because it wasn't until a few years into Lakewood that she came on staff, but I took on a role as a worship leader. And it was the first time that I was actually hired in that role since we were married. So it took some adjustment and some getting used to. But yeah, that's how that story unfolded.
Something that many church planners and pastors and dreamers can relate to is that there was a time, where you had all these big dreams, these aspirations. You obviously have a lot in you that you want to present to the world, where maybe others around you didn't recognize that. Maybe your circumstances around you didn't confirm the fact that these dreams were going to come to pass. When you were in those moments or back in that time, what encouraged you and kept you going when maybe others didn't see it yet and affirm in you what you're getting to experience right now?
It's really good. It's a great question. I think, first of all, to a certain level, I've always had someone affirming that there was more possible. Starting with my parents, my dad always referred to me as a leader. Now, as a parent, I know what he was doing. But so whether it was true or not, when he started saying it, I started to believe it, that I was a leader, that if I was going to lead, that I had the opportunity to either lead people toward good things or lead people toward negative things. And so I had that understanding very young. My parents built a strong sense of self-confidence and leadership in me. And then I had a youth pastor that believed in me and gave me opportunity and things like that. So I am fortunate enough to have had people to counteract the negative voices, because at the same time I had, a teacher tell me kids like me ended up in jail, and I had plenty of negativity circling me as well. But it was just a few voices of truth that broke through some of those other negative ideas and helped me believe that something was actually possible. But there was a particular defining moment. I was in Bible college. I came home to work to get money to go back to school. And I was working in a factory, and I was working in some retail spaces and things like that. And one of my friends, who was a little bit younger than me, was back at the church and had a church office and had a title and a position and all of that. And I was working in the factory, third shift, and then showing up on Sunday mornings to run sound. And I was frustrated, and I was talking to my dad about it, like, this guy's got his name on the door and he's got a position and all of that. And I'm out here, working in a plastics factory. And he said that it's okay. You just haven't found your place yet. And I went into a time where I really got close to God in that time. And I found this scripture, to be strong and courageous, that God had called this particular person. This is speaking of David in this scripture. It refers to Joshua in another, but Chronicles referring to David. It says, I've called you to build a house unto the Lord. Be strong and do the work. And I had this kind of personal revelation that I had been called to build the house of the Lord, that no matter what way that I was able to serve, that was the point, the mission, the goal was to build the house. And that in order to build the house, you had to be willing to do the work. And the work looks different in different seasons of life. And in the season I was in at 19, 20, was to work a couple of jobs and to get my money together and get back to school. But that was a season of my life where my heart was galvanized around the reality that I had been called to do something for God in an absolute way.
There's so much in there that you just shared that, we can take away from. One being that you never know how powerful your encouragement to someone else could be, but also how faithfulness doesn't start when you get there. It's how you get there.
Yep.
Hey everyone, I'm here with Greg Daly from Parable. One of the reasons why I wanted to team up with Parable is because this is a podcast focused on church planters, and they're a business focused on church planters. In fact, they offer something truly incredible for church planters who are in need of bookkeeping services. Greg, could you tell us a little more about what you do for church planters?
Yeah, we love helping churches get started on the right foot. When I was a church planner, the things that I didn't have is a lot of money to spend on things. And so we wanted to make an investment into those churches, and it's kind of our way of kind of sponsoring the church plant a little bit. And we do a setup fee and then no monthly cost up until their launch, up to 9 months in advance. So basically you get 9 months of pretty much free accounting. That way, you don't have to think about, should I spend this money here? Should I not? You can just go for it. And then once you launch, start to actually receive donations, then you can start to pay for the monthly.
You give church planters time to get that income in to support their mission. So thank you for doing that and offering that to church planters, and for sponsoring this podcast so we can equip church planters, inspire them, and challenge them to be all they can be to reach their communities. If you want to find out more about Parable, you can go to their website, liveyourparable.com, click the Let's Chat button, and you'll get 25% off your onboarding fees when you use the promo code BelieveAgain. I love to visit historic churches, but I've noticed that churches were never meant just to gather people for worship, but to communicate the church's mission and values. Church buildings have changed over the years to meet the needs of modern ministries. Whether you're in a space that needs to be updated or you have a vision for a project to reach more people in your community, Live Design Group can help. Live Design is an architectural and interior design firm that is passionate about helping you seek God's will for your church facility. They have a highly interactive design process that begins with a free consultation. To find out more about Live Design Group, go to livedesigngroup.com or email Craig at craig@livedesigngroup.com. That's CRAIG at livedesigngroup.com. Now you're moving full steam ahead. Your music career is going so well. But on top of that, now you guys are planting a church, Church of Whitestone. When you told me the story of how God confirmed this vision in your heart, I thought it was one of the most amazing things I'd ever heard. I was a fan instantly. Mm-hmm. And I think it'd be encouraging for others to hear as well. How did that come to pass? How did that name come to pass? And how did God confirm this was your next step?
Yeah. In 2016, God really started stirring in my heart the reality that we would be planting a church at some point. It was something that I had wanted to do early on, felt called to do in Bible college, and just it had not been the right timing. It hadn't been in the right place or the right season. So we got to 2016, and I was just praying and looking through scripture, and I found this verse, Revelation 2:17, to the one who overcomes, he will give a white stone with a name engraved on it that only they know. And the fact that our identity is so hidden in the hand of Christ that there is a name that we are known by in heaven that is not yet known to us, that God holds our white stone, our true identity. And so I kind of tucked that away in my heart and started putting together values around what I would see a church being about, and started putting together graphics and hired a graphic designer to make a logo, and got all the handles and the website and all of that in 2016. And then talked to my pastor about it, and he didn't feel like it was time to step forward into that. So we just kind of tucked it away and kept serving and ministering. God did amazing things with my music career at that time that I just was not anticipating, and really accelerated what I had been attempting to do in music for 10 years. And we ended up going to Austin on a family vacation. And we were driving through Austin. This was about 3 years ago. And we came across Whitestone Boulevard. And I was like, interesting, Whitestone Boulevard. That's kind of crazy. And Lorna and I just kind of laughed like, well, maybe we should plant a church here. There's already a street here called Whitestone. And that was kind of the extent of it. And we went back and we were praying about other cities. We visited Boston And we had written down a list of other cities, but we were just thinking, man, we should probably put Austin down here, Georgetown, Texas, on our list to be praying about. Well, a few years later, we were really feeling compelled to step out, to take the first step of faith toward planting the church. But we still didn't know exactly where we should go. So we went back to Austin, and we were just kind of scoping it out, praying, God, if this is the place, reveal your will to us. We want to know that we're called to a people in a place. So we go to Georgetown to visit, and we're with my wife's cousin, and we're driving around Georgetown, and I'm like, bro, tell me about Whitestone, because I've had this thing in my heart, and now I'm seeing Whitestone Veterinary Clinic and Whitestone Dentistry and all of this. I'm trying to understand, is this a geographic area in the city, or is there a meaning to this? Tell me about Whitestone. He said, no, it's actually not the name of a city, not the name of an area or anything like that. At that time, we were driving past the quarry, and he said, this is actually the quarry where they dig all the Texas limestone out of. He said, Texas limestone is called Whitestone. And then he said, Austin is built on Whitestone. And I thought that this is a confirming word. I just felt the witness of the Holy Spirit in that, and felt like, okay, this is the place, where people will discover their God-authored identity through wholehearted relationship with him. So we ended up taking that as, yes, this is the place. And then we started praying, God, show us the timetable. We want to do this according to your time. We don't want to ask people for any money or any resources. You can put us on people's heart to let us know that this is the moment that we're supposed to step into this. We started praying that prayer. We prayed it for about 2 weeks. One specific afternoon, I was driving downtown Houston with Lorna to do a podcast, and we prayed in the car, God, put us on people's hearts. If you want us to step out and do this, our answer is yes. Went into the podcast, shut my phone off, did our thing, turned my phone back on, and I had a text from a business owner, and he said, hey man, we're putting together our budget for next year. And we just wanted to know if there's anything on your heart, because anything that you're passionate about, we're passionate about. And in that moment, I didn't know where he was really at with words like spirit led, but I went ahead and let him know, whether you realize it or not, this is a spirit led text. We just prayed for God to give us the green light into this next season of our life. And that is to be planting a brand new life-giving church in Austin, Texas. He was like, no way, that's amazing, we're in. So we really had those moments happen pretty close together, and we knew the place and we knew the time. So we put our house on the market the next month.
Wow, that's amazing. I remember sitting down with you and you telling me this story and thinking that the name Church of Whitestone and the meaning that you guys have behind that is so apt for the time that we're in, and people are searching for who they are. And we know the best place they can find that is in the local church, where they can find the hope of Christ. Just such a God story. Amy and I, we remember when you, in 2016, reached out about planting a church, and your song Hills and Valleys was all over the radio.
Yeah.
And oh my goodness, TAUREN WELLS is applying to plant a church. And then, you paused that out of obedience to God's timing. And I think that's something important for pastors and leaders to know, that what is just as important as when. And
Yes.
Stepping out the right time is just as important as stepping out in the right direction. And so now you guys are doing your recruiting gatherings, you're hosting parties and vision nights. How's that going so far?
It's going amazing, man. It's been incredible. We have had a heart and soul gathering. We had like 37 people at that. It was very kind of close knit, very intentional, brought people together in February. And then we did a Good Friday on the Square in April. We had over 4,000 people at that event. It was absolutely amazing. And that's where we actually shared and announced the fact that we were planting a church in North Austin. So that was met with a lot of excitement. And then we just had a vision party last month. It was our first vision party Had over 400 people there at that, and many people, hundreds of people jumping on the launch team. So we're doing a choir room event because we love the choir, the church choir. We've got over 300 people coming to that, and interest meetings, and we're starting our growth track and small groups and all of that before we even start having services. So we are in the thick of it, have an amazing team, families that have moved from all over the country, Tennessee, Florida, California, Illinois, to come help us lift the vision that God has for this city. So we're super excited and just waking up every morning and saying, yes, Lord. What's the question?
This is amazing. And I think anyone that's listening to this podcast or watching it on YouTube can hear your heart and know that this is someone that cares about people. He's not just a celebrity. He's somebody that is also has a leader's mindset. And when I hear that you had 400 people at a gathering, some people might wonder, well, that's because you did a concert. That's because you were performing. What would you say to that?
We have the interesting situation of trying to make sure that if we bring people into a room, we actually know what to do with them. We don't want to do people the disservice of having big numbers but not having a clear plan. So we're trying to balance that. So no, that we sang one song and I didn't sing. A very talented worship leader on our team sang, and I was super hyped because John Bellion just did a new version of Switchfoot, Meant to Live. So
oh really?
Yeah, we performed that. We had like a 3-piece string set, and the whole night was just about you are more. So all of our signs said this way to more, and then the song was we were meant to live for so much more, and then I spoke a message, what more do you want? And a lot of times in our lives we're pursuing more, but we never stop back to think about what more do we want, because there's more that we could obtain that will crush us, but there's also another more that we could attain that will actually lift us. So it was a great night through and through. People were encouraged, and I think our whole vantage point is unique in that we're not just trying to get people to populate our gatherings so that we can celebrate numbers. We really want to find what is intrinsically unique about every individual and empower them to live out the gospel in the unique way they're gifted to do it. So that's our hope for people.
I'd love to wrap up with you telling people how they can stay connected with you, your music, Church of Whitestone. But before we do, could you take a second and tell us about the newest EP that just came out?
Yeah, so just dropped a new EP called Take It All Back. It's a part of a deluxe album that I released too, called Joy in the Morning Horizon Edition. And it's several new songs, new versions of songs, some live versions, some live in studio versions that we did. So it's a really fun musical journey with some new textures and tones. Have some great guests actually too. We've got Katie Torwalt, Fred Hammond, We the Kingdom, Davies, Doe, Lecrae. It's stacked. So it's an amazing experience, both musically and spiritually, for people to enjoy. You can go check out more at TAURENWELLS.com. You can go investigate the church at yourwhitestone.org. And of course, follow us across all social media platforms at Your Whitestone.
Man, Fred Hammond, that's a big deal.
Yes, bro. Like, that was a dream. I went to a Fred Hammond concert when I was a little kid, and to have him call me nephew was like one of the paramount moments of my life. So it's a really dope song, and he did an incredible job with it.
Well, thank you so much for doing this with me. I loved hearing more of your heart and learning more about your journey as a musician, as a pastor, and you're a great podcast host. I don't know how anyone can listen to you talk and not say, man, I want to go check out more and hear from this guy. So thank you so much for doing this.
Well, thank you, man. Thank you for what you're doing and for all your help. I'm sure that the listeners to this particular podcast know you and what you do, but the way that you have come alongside us, myself and Lorna, has been absolutely instrumental and invaluable in how we have approached this church launch. There have been so many questions I've asked that you've either given me great answers to or pointed me to people with great answers. So just grateful for you and Amy and your belief in us and what you're doing. So thank you for having me on. It's a true honor.
Well, thanks again. And yeah, we definitely believe in you, believe in your heart, and just can't wait to see what God does through Church of Whitestone. I would like to thank my guest, TAUREN Wells, for joining me today. Also, I'd like to thank our sponsors, Parable, who helps place every dollar on mission by providing church accounting, bookkeeping, and strategic services so you can tell the most incredible story of all, his story, even with your ministry's money. Go to liveyourparable.com and click Let's Chat to see how Parable can help you stay focused on the mission. You also get 25% off your onboarding fees when you enter the promo code BELIEVEAGAIN. Live Design Group is an architectural and interior design firm working with growing organizations focused on creating places that bring people together. Their highly interactive live design process lets you explore your options as the design evolves in real time. You can schedule your free consultation at livedesigngroup.com. Also like to thank Isaiah Duncan and Nicole Atkinson, who helped me produce this episode. And finally, thank you to Yellowbox for designing the Believe Again brand and building the believeagain.co website. Find out more about them at yellowbox.co. Thank you for being with us today, and I can't wait for you to join us next time. TAUREN, I'm getting a little bit of a cramp here in my leg, so I'm drinking the water while you're saying
Bro,
it's
what
like
is
super
happening?
important.
Your leg is cramping?
Yeah, I'm like sitting here with my leg bent and several cups of coffee in me.
Stretch it out. Stretch. Let's take a stretch break. I'm sorry, Jay. My bad. That's a first.
Oh my gosh, it was so painful.
I preached this man's muscles into cramping.
I'm like, man.